Welcome to Connected, the podcast for and about entrepreneurs who weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth.
All right. Well, welcome. So I want to welcome everybody to the first edition of Connected, the podcast for entrepreneurs who weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth. And our first guest tonight is coming all the way from London, England, Sarah Shadden from Legacy Networking, also known as the Networking Queen. So welcome, Sarah. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me, Ray. I'm looking forward to having a chat. And I'm the self-proclaimed networking queen. So the queen herself has not knighted me yet, but I'll wait for that.
Yeah, you know what? That may actually be coming. You never know. I know. Speaking of that, what are some of the differences? Because I'm really curious. I have never been to London yet. I plan to go soon. I think this past year, a lot of my travel plans had been, like many people, have been pushed on the back burner, but looking to get back over to Europe. And what are some of the differences in how people network? I know there's some major cultural differences, and since you've lived in both California and London, what are some things that you've noticed that are different about the way people network and connect?
That's a really good question. The biggest difference is that when we're in America, we just come out and say hello. We get straight to, hugging and kissing and into conversation. And in mostly Britain, but I would also say in wider Europe, there's a little bit more of a barrier that you have to get past, a level of familiarity you have to, build up with people. And it's usually small talk. The small talk lasts a lot longer. So you can talk about the weather. You can go into, what people have done for the weekend, whether or not the trains are running on time. You have to go through all that kind of stuff before you get into the familiarity type conversations where you start to go, so what do you do? And, where are you from? All those kind of questions come after you build up that. Do you know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. I know that here in the States, most people hate the small talk. Like, what do you want?
Exactly.
Get right to the point. What do you do? Why? So that is really, really interesting. So I'm wondering, in your training, do you kind of coach people on questions to ask on how to start a conversation?
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of what I've been a lot of where I started was other colleagues, because I'm in a really international environment here in London. So everybody is pretty much an expat, whether they're from India or, from the Far East, or, whether they're from the States or Canada. A lot of Australians, they find that interacting with especially British people can be a little bit different. People, especially Australians, they're out there, they're loud, they want to have a party, they want to have a good time. And I think British people are definitely like that once they get to the pub, don't get me wrong. But a lot of what I try to convey, especially when it comes to business, is that we have to go through those motions, the pleasantries first. There has to be a level of understanding of your volume. And as a Californian, I can be loud too.
Yes.
But they want you to go through the motions before you get to that point in the evening where you can start to, let your hair down, get loud, go to the pub, have a drink. And it's something I had to learn when I first started networking here. I felt like I was too much almost for a lot of people. And then I had to just kind of bring it in. Okay, let's, talk at their volume. Let's talk about the weather. Let's go through the, motions and the pleasantries. And then you start to realize that the wall will come down, the ice, that ice barrier will start to melt. And I think people really, they realize after a little while that I think there's a misconception that British people are a little standoffish.
Yes.
there's this, and you'll notice this when you come to London. There's this rule that you don't make eye contact on public transport. You know how when in the States you'd be waiting in line and you might turn and smile to someone, or if a train's delayed, you might turn around and complain together. That doesn't happen in London. It's very much like you keep to yourself. But it doesn't mean that they're standoffish. It just means that you have to play by the rules and kind of go through the motions, and then they open up a little bit more.
That's interesting. It kind of leads me to kind of a controversial, maybe a little off topic, but while I have you on the phone, I'll talk to you. You know what I'm going to ask about is the Duchess, I guess, Meghan Markle. I'm curious, from a British perspective, what happened over there. I mean, obviously we get it filtered through the news media, and so just curious, what on the ground, the word is, and how you feel, what happened.
What happened? That's the question, isn't it? I think here in the UK, there was, I think, a misunderstanding as far as the approach that we would probably take as Americans to certain situations, whether it was her kind of standing on the balcony outside of Buckingham Palace waving. There's moments where there'd be flyovers and military things happening, and I think she just had this innate wanting to smile and be that positive person that we are always taught to be, but actually there's a level of seriousness that you have to have in those moments. And I think there was almost this just almost a disconnect between the way that, especially women, the way that we're kind of taught to just smile and be that kind of positive, person, and especially in the States, like, hi, how are you? Let's touch. You can't touch royals. So she's like shaking hands and she's hugging people, and you're not really supposed to touch. And you're not really supposed to, curtsy in certain ways and all this kind of stuff. So the fact of the matter is I think British people expected her to come over here, read all the rules, follow the rules, and she probably thought, I'm gonna just be me, which you would just be yourself,
Sure.
But I think there was a disconnect there when they first got married. Obviously everybody was really excited, and it was such a good time. Like, I remember in Windsor, it was crazy. But I think as time got on, the British public and the British royal family, they're used to things working a certain way, and you don't talk about politics, you don't complain ever, and then there's like a set, like, sort of way that you are with the public. So there is a level of distance that you probably would take with people, and I think she just threw all that out the window and was just like, I'm gonna do me.
Wow, yeah, I didn't envy her position. It's one of those things, be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. I wish I was a princess.
Yeah, there's not a lot of freedom when you are in that kind of position. So I think she got herself and I think, to be honest with you as well, she probably didn't, or she said on the Oprah interview, she didn't do very much research. And I think there was a level of, maybe took me 2-3 years for me to really understand, like, unwritten rules in British culture. And, she was here, I don't know, 18 months, something like that. I don't think she really got a chance to integrate, if you know what I mean.
No, I know exactly what you mean. And then she's on, like, in the spotlight, right? Not just a person who moved there. I think there's probably a level of, understanding when, you're from another country, but she's in the spotlight, and there's an expectation that, we ran into similar, I think, with our first lady here at Melania Trump. She's not from here. And so I think, she had some missteps that were based on just fact she didn't know the language very well. And she said some things, and I think she had a poster or something. She had a campaign called Be Best. And there's like, you heard that, and it's like, Be Best? I don't think that's a thing. So anyway. so I get it, but anyway, it is what it is. So I appreciate it. I don't want to dwell too long on it. I know probably all of your friends are asking about that, but while I had you on the line, I wanted to.
Of course. I love the idea, though, because we, as Californian girls, I think everybody, when she first got over here, we were like, oh my gosh, we got representation in the royal family. So I followed it really closely, but I could see as soon as she got here, they were nitpicking everything she was doing. And I know why they're doing it. I know where they're coming from because I understand why they think that way. But at the same time, I understand why she thinks the way she's thinking. Sure. So it's like, I knew it was going to be a little bit of a problem, but I never would have been able to foresee what had happened.
Yeah, I don't think anybody kind of really saw that coming, where they would just say, okay, we're leaving the family, we're moving back to America. And it's really strange. I wish them well. I hope it ends up, with a happy ending, fairy tale ending, as I guess those things are supposed to end. But we'll see. It's a tough one. But, we'll see.
Maybe we'll run into them in California sometime.
We just might. Now we just might. And I think Harry, it's Harry, right? Harry got a job today or something in Silicon Valley. So he's a working man, a company guy. So it's interesting.
Very anti. It's very against what the royals would do, and it did make the headlines over here that he started this new job. Yeah. It's just very not like them to have a job,
Right. Right. So yeah. Come to my office. What is that? Where?
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen Downton Abbey. I mean, it's kind of a girl show. It's definitely a girly show. But on that show, they kind of showed one of the duchesses said, "What is a weekend?" And it made it clear that she had no concept of a working week. And that was how it was. And I think that the class system is the main difference between the UK and the US. No matter how much money you have, you can't escape your class. And that's very like set here. Whereas in the US, it doesn't matter where you came from. As long as you're successful, you're successful.
Yes.
But yeah, I think there's a real class. I think it was more of a class thing than anything else, if I'm honest with you, with Meghan. And with Harry getting a job, it's almost like he's lowering himself down into the working classes or something.
The proletariat.
Exactly.
Wow, interesting. Well, we'll see. Like I said, I'm sure their story will continue for some time. So I'm interested to see how it unfolds. And
Me too.
I do wish them well and happiness, however that looks for them.
Me too.
So next topic, I kind of want to talk about, we've all this past year has been really interesting for folks who are trying to network, and particularly folks like us, right? Network coaches, who are trying to advise people on how to network. And I'm sure you got the same question I get all the time. How do I network during the pandemic? Right. And I'm curious how you went about, how did you broach that subject? How did you approach it?
Yeah, that's a really good one. And that's the main subject that I always get.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that we've all done is pivoted directly into the whole virtual space and the various different areas of that virtual environment, whether it's tapping back into your old network on LinkedIn and starting conversations there, or whether it's joining whole new organizations and associations online that you can start to form new relationships with. I think the main thing is starting with what you want to accomplish. So there's a lot of people who have recently been coming to me about social networking. So I don't have any social contacts. I'm sick of my colleagues. I talk to them all day. I have no one else to socialize with. What do you do? And there's so many different things you can organize. Recently I went on a virtual tarot card reading, and she, was able to tell our futures, and it was just fun to do, something you would never expect to do virtually. And then, of course, there's people who are saying, I've got to get out of my job or my industry because it's, I'm in a failing sector, or, I'm really worried about the security of my job, so I have to pivot. And then there's that, okay, there's associations within your industry and areas where you can look to find new contacts where they're facilitating a structure for you to all meet in one place, whether that's an association that has like virtual conferences, or some of them that I've seen that actually facilitate like mentorships within the association. Obviously that's an investment in your future. So if there's a yearly fee, you have to weigh up whether that's going to be worth it for you to start to interact with those people in your industry and maybe get a new position. So it really depends on what you want to do, but there are just so many areas in our virtual environment to connect. And then kind of outside of that, one of the things I've kind of suggested is to just make sure that you do take the opportunity for meeting in person where we are able to. I've been setting up, the UK is probably behind the US. So from next weekend, we're allowed to meet up to 6 people outside. And so I've just been setting up like little one-to-ones and like little sort of groups of 2 and 3 of people that I haven't seen in a long time, but live somewhat locally to me. And then as well within my team, my team, so that I can actually meet up with the people that I work with. So yeah, just do as much as you can, obviously, online. And then as soon as things open back up, hopefully, fingers crossed, we can all start to get in person again.
Yeah, it's starting to look, particularly here in the U.S., I think people are really optimistic, enthusiastic, maybe over optimistic. I don't know. I know I am, that I'm ready to get out of the house and start meeting people, and particularly, in our line of work, right, where our whole business is based around networking and meeting people and shaking hands. And there's some things that just don't translate across video. As good as it is what it is. There's some things I think the advantages of it have been, getting to meet folks like you. Like, I don't know if I would have, we would have this conversation if it wasn't
exactly
for, the pandemic. I'd be out somewhere right now. Probably.
Exactly.
So being able to be home and meet people from my marketing coach is based in London, believe it or not. And then I have in Japan and all over the world, South Africa. And I have all these connections that I very well may not have had if it wasn't for the pandemic. So, every thorn has a rose, I think. Right?
Every cloud has a silver lining.
Yes. So good. So
definitely.
Cool. So I want to talk a little bit about shop. What are some tips? What tips do you have for folks who struggle a little bit with networking? I see that's your forte.
Yeah, I think the main basis for networking for me and the main struggles that I see are around both mindset and confidence. I think that when people say they're struggling with networking, I think what they're saying is they are struggling internally with the way that they are either presenting themselves or with the idea of how they're going to be perceived. And they are in their own heads, I think, about that. I don't think it's necessarily, obviously you can move on to like the actual skill that you might employ and some of the strategies that you can execute. But I think the basis of people struggling to network, the tips I would have would be around framing your mindset for generosity, service, and just being there as someone who is putting themselves out there without wanting anything in return, but also still has a really high level of understanding of what they bring to the table. So it's not like I have so much to bring to the table, so I'm just going to push it on everyone. But you have to have that confidence in yourself to articulate what you do bring to the table, and then just present it in a spirit of generosity and service. And if you have those two things, the rest of it will come naturally. And that's pretty much like my main basis. And where I kind of started was in the service industry. And I started my networking across a hotel lobby as someone that worked in hotels all throughout college. So I met my mentors. I met a lot of my friends. I met most of the people that pretty much spurred me on to come to the UK. I met them all in that particular environment where it was my job to just get them whatever they needed and just be helpful. And because of that attitude and being open, they were like, hey, you're really cool. What are you about? Where can I help you get to in your life? And it's weird how people want to help you just because you're helping them without anything in return.
Yes, it's the go-giver concept, right? Where you give, and then ask, and people are like, oh yeah. And there's also the law of reciprocity, which, really, when I kind of started to understand that, it really changed my life. And I think a lot of my clients, when I share with them exactly what you're talking about, just this ability to, be generous first. Most people mess up, I think, in networking because they ask first. Right. And if you can't buy my stuff, if you can't buy what I'm selling, I don't want to talk to you again, and so that's what we're taught.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad to hear that you're teaching gratitude and generosity. I think those are the key, the connection.
Yeah. And then not only that, but everybody that you meet, let's say they're not someone that's going to buy from you and full well they never will.
Right.
The thing that you're probably thinking is, okay, well, I need to move on in this conversation, move on with my life. Actually, some of the things that have been impactful for me and for a lot of the people that I talk to is that those people will be the ones who have a referral process that ends up being really lucrative for you. And although they may have nothing to do with your industry and don't want anything to do with your products, they will sing your praises louder than anyone else just because you took the time to listen and to make that connection.
You're absolutely right. I think this guy named Mark Granovetter, who wrote this book, Getting a Job, which is just kind of, but it applies to so many things about weak links and how most jobs and most opportunities come through people that are not your close friends, or not people that you would think that you would have a good relationship with. You just have a weak link, or what's the word I'm thinking about? Not a strong connection with them. But those are the people that have access to things that you don't. They have information you don't. They know people you don't, and it leads to more and better opportunities. Cool. Let me ask you this, because you sound like a reader, like I am. Any books that you recommend for folks to read, or things that are
definitely
favorites of yours?
Yes. So I've been reading a book called Never Eat Alone. By you know what I'm talking about?
Our favorite, Keith Ferrari.
I know. I love it. So it's. Yeah, 100% recommend. Obviously, you know why. It's just one of those books that sums up all of what we're talking about in a way that is just so digestible. I always read books over and over again as well. Mm-hmm. There's a book that I was reading recently called, and I think I have it here actually. It's called Now Discover Your Strengths, and I'll actually show it to you. It's
Buckingham. Okay, got it.
So basically, it kind of just goes back to what I was talking about earlier as far as confidence. And one of the things that my clients and I, what I see the most is this idea of not knowing what it is I bring to the table and then being able to articulate it properly. So it's kind of like has all of these personality profiles, and you kind of go through and you pick like 4 or 5 of them, and they're types of strengths that you might embody within your personality, and then you have the ability to really put that into an actionable topic and kind of say, okay, this is how I'm going to bring value to the table. For when people ask me that all dreaded question of, what do you do? You're never going to tell them what your job title is. You're really going to tell them, how you impact people. And this kind of helps you discover your strengths.
That's great. Oh, wow. No, I'm definitely picking that up. Thank you. I love that.
It's actually Marie Forleo who recommended that, and it was something I was listening to of hers. I think it may have been her book, but yeah, it's definitely something I recommend.
Cool, definitely. Thank you. Cool. So what are some things? This is an interesting question. What are some things you wish people knew about you?
that I wish they knew about me.
Yeah, some of the people don't know that. Yeah. What do you wish people?
Well, I wish that people knew that I class myself as an introvert and that I can be really shy. And I think the reason I would say that is because sometimes people say to me, "Oh, it's easy for you to say networking is simple. It's easy for you to say, all you have to do is find your strengths and put yourself out there and blah, blah, blah." Actually, you can put yourself out there and be an introvert or a shy person or someone that's not necessarily comfortable around a crowd of people. And I was that person, especially when I first started my hospitality journey, whenever I was supposed to be the face of, a big hotel brand. And I think it's something that you never lose. You always do feel that level of shyness. And, before you go, to an event, or even if you are, meeting someone new, you always feel that. But I think that, turning that, again, the mindset of what that feeling is and defining it as an excitement, maybe, as opposed to an anxiety or a nervousness, and being able to really kind of change the direction of your thought process really helps to overcome that. And, I want people to know that even as a networking consultant or someone that is actually advocating for making connections on a personal level, I'm still quite shy as well. I'm still quite introverted. But maybe on a more fun note, what people don't know about me that maybe would be interesting to them is that I'm married to a magician, and we have a really colorful set of skills between the two of us. So he is a former British champion of magic, and we have lots of fun with the doves that he owns because he's a dove magician, and he has loads of props, and we both love theater, and we're very colorful people in that regard. So I'm sure you never would have guessed that.
Never. Wow, you got me with that one.
But yeah, it does mean that we meet really interesting people. And as far as networking is concerned, if you ever needed a specialty act for your party, I would know one.
That is so cool. Yeah, I never would have guessed that. That is so cool. I'm so glad I asked that question now. Cool. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing, what you have coming up. Sure. A little bit about where people can find you, what your programs are, and
Definitely.
Plug yourself.
Okay. Well, Legacy Networking is obviously on Instagram at Legacy Networking and on Facebook at Legacy Networking. But what I am building at the moment is a community of people who really want to be better networkers. I am championing people, especially millennial professionals. So people that are my age. I'm probably, very similar to a lot of other people. I'm at the beginning of, a corporate quote unquote career that I am loving because it allows me to network. But I want to help other millennial professionals and entrepreneurs, because I'm one of those as well, to become super networkers. So I'm creating a community off the back of my Facebook group, Networking for Millennials. It basically is going to be a safe space for us to bring in guest experts, probably like yourself and others, to talk us through where, let's not walk the long, hard road anymore. Let's walk through the footsteps of people who have been there before. So the community is going to be called the Legacy Network, and it's launching at the end of May. And I'm looking forward to being able to facilitate introductions within the community as well, and really just put people in touch with one another, and maybe like a mastermind circle sort of point of view. But also really want to have some fun social events as well. So maybe I'll bring in my tarot card reader and do a couple of tarot readings. But so at the end of May, I'm going to be launching the Legacy Network, and at Legacy Networking on Instagram is probably the best place for you to find all the information.
Oh, that is so awesome. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining me from across the pond. This has been a really interesting conversation. I look forward to having more. And everybody who's joining us, thank you for joining. And you have a good day. And
thank you so much, Ray.
Happy networking.
Happy networking.